My name's Jordana. My story is about multiple different traumas that have happened. The main trauma is my dad, who abused me from the ages of 4 until 12. He went to jail in 2011 for abusing me, but also abusing 2 of my friends as well. He also had charges as well for making indecent photographs. He was in possession of hundreds of child abuse images. That's what he went to jail for. My dad was quite abusive to my mom. Before she had me, she already had my older sister who was abusive towards her. And so when she had me, from like a few months old to like 7 or 8 months, I think, I'm not too sure on the timeline, she took my older sister, obviously because she couldn't deal with it anymore, and she took my older sister and left to go live in America. I'm not too sure why she didn't take me. A few months after living over there, she tried to make amends with my dad, but they kind of reconnected, and then he got me and him a flight to go live over there, and then we lived in Florida for a few months. I lived with my dad until I was 12, and then that's when I went into foster care. I think the reason why I struggle to kind of like discuss and deal with everything is because I was just alone. This has happened to a lot of people. Obviously, it's not any better. They have had like other family members or family friends. I just didn't have any of that. When I was growing up and these things were happening, I didn't have anyone to talk to, and I didn't have anyone to tell things to. I had a bedroom, but I wouldn't sleep in my bedroom. Like, I'd sleep on the floor in the living room, and he would sleep next to me on the floor in the living room. And that happened all the way up until I was like 11. And I would sleep naked as well, and he would sleep naked. Obviously, these things that were happening, I thought they were normal. That's why I kind of struggled to make friends and stuff, because things that I just thought were correct or the right way to do things just were not the right way. I was made to kind of like believe that my mom was kind of like this horrible person that didn't want me, and that's what I believed growing up. I wasn't allowed to call her by mom, I had to call her by. When I eventually did meet her, she wasn't the best. It's not healthy to tell a child your mom is this terrible person, that she hates you and she doesn't want you and stuff like that. That's not healthy. When I eventually did meet her, because of the things that I was told, it didn't help our relationship. Maybe that's part of the reason why we struggled to bond with each other. I think I just want to point out as well that even though there was a lot of abuse, there was a lot more mental, psychological and emotional abuse. There was a lot of physical abuse as well. I remember abuse happening from when I was about 4. I just remember being in a bed on multiple different occasions and him kind of like caressing me, touching me. And even though I was really young, when I picture these memories back, I just remember them being very intimate. The main memories I have of the sexual abuse was quite frequently throughout my childhood, he would make me watch movies with him. It would start off where he would be like, "Do you want to watch a movie?" You know, I'd be like, "Yes," and then he'd put the movies on. Whenever the movies came on, I always remember feeling really uncomfortable. I didn't quite understand what they were fully. I just remember feeling uncomfortable. He would ask me questions to do with the movie, if I enjoyed what I was seeing on the movies. I remember there was one particular time when we were watching one of the movies, there was a scene on there where they were it was like a threesome, so it was 2 males and a female. And he would ask me if I would prefer 2 males doing the same thing that they were doing to her to me, instead of just one person. There was also a lot of times where he had kind of like an obsession with me dancing. There was times where he would ask me to dance for him, and it didn't make any sense because he would switch off all the lights. He couldn't really see what I was doing. but he would just kind of like tell me what to do. So he would, tell me how to dance in a specific way, and then he would sit there and watch. There was also times where I would be lying down and he would come over and kind of just start like touching me and stuff. When this was happening, it was very uncomfortable for me. He was a very scary person. He had multiple different sides to him. I knew that if I didn't comply to what he was doing, or if I was to interrupt him and say, I don't want you to do this, or I don't like this, it wasn't going to end up well. He would sit on a chair that was opposite the couch, and he would kind of like tell me to get undressed, and then I had to kind of like have my legs open like this while he was sitting on the chair. And then he would tell me, to kind of like touch myself, to use the cream and touch myself. And then he would obviously pleasure himself. When he was pleasuring himself, and obviously when he finished doing that, when these events finished, we just didn't talk about them. He also made it clear to me that I don't tell anyone that this is happening. There was times where he would kind of like teach me about the anatomy of obviously a man. He would tell me to touch different areas of him, and then he would kind of like give me an explanation as to what this thing is and obviously what these different parts do. We would celebrate Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day for me and my dad was just very different, too intimate. It was like we were in a couple. That was the relationship. Like, he would write me cards and I would write him cards, but in his cards they were very detailed, and they were always just kind of about how I was the only one like in his life, like how he adored me. The only way I can describe is I would just shut off. He would hit me and stuff. The stuff he did was really hurt. I was able to just shut my brain down and just like become this numb person. When I was a kid, until I have 2 children now, but until I had my first child, I really struggled with emotions. When stuff like this has happened and traumatic experiences have happened, you're always going to struggle. Like, that's a normal thing. It will always be there. There is hope and like help to help you. You can rebuild life after these things have happened. I have a family now. Even though I do struggle with my mental health, I have an amazing life. It is definitely possible to rebuild your life after these things have happened. It's just a bit harder to do it. And now I have a lot of supportive people. Even though I find it hard to trust people a lot, but I love life. Like, I wasn't connected with my emotions at all or anything. But now I'm too emotional. I'm really super connected to everything to do with life. Like, I can look at a tree, just think to myself, that is such a beautiful tree. I think it's because like growing up and, until I had my eldest, it was really sad. Like, I didn't have any love for anything or anyone. I really, really felt empty. But then when I created a family, had my daughter, I just became so overwhelmed with just love for absolutely everything. And I began to look around the world and appreciate things. When I was growing up, aside from, abuse, he had multiple different sides to him. So like, he had a really funny side. He also had a really loving side. But then there was this just really dark side of him where he was horrible, and he was dark, and he was aggressive. The stuff that he would like say to me it was horrible. Like, he would just make me believe that I was a terrible, terrible person. There was this time where kind of like, he wasn't a religious person, and he would often talk about how he was this terrible person and that when he dies he's going to hell, and he would always laugh and make a joke of it. He also, I don't know how he did this, but he also made me believe that I was going to hell when I died. So as a kid, I thought I was this terrible person, and I literally used to think that when I die, I'm going to hell. And it became so normal for me to believe this. When he said that, oh, I'm terrible, I'm going to hell, I would do the same thing. So I would laugh about it to him, and I would say, oh, I'm a terrible person too, I'm going to hell, and I would laugh about it. He put me down a lot. He would always compare me to other kids, other people, other people's children. Even though I really struggled to make friends, and I was different, so I didn't have a lot of friends. I did have one really good friend, and she was like my best friend. I met her when I was 5, but as I got older, he did allow a couple of sleepovers with this friend. She came over, and obviously during the night when we were both sleeping, he abused her. When this happened, our friendship I didn't understand why she became very distant from me, because this had happened to her. A couple of years went by, and I was at school. A teacher came into the classroom and called me and said, Jordana, we need to take Jordana out of class. They took me into one of the offices. When I walked into the office, there was 2 police officers and a social worker. They told me that I wasn't going back home. They couldn't tell me what exactly, but there had been some serious allegations made against my dad, and that while the investigation takes place, I can't return home. I'll be staying in foster care until, everything gets resolved. Going back, the friend that had been sexually abused by him, when we were about 12, she was having nightmares and she was having panic attacks because of the abuse. She told a friend, and the friend advised her that she needs to go to the police. So she told the police, and obviously that's when they came and got me from school. While I was in foster care, I had contact with him a couple times a week. It would have to be supervised with a social worker. I've actually got some of the paperwork from when I was in foster care, and a lot of the paperwork from when we had face-to-face meetings with my dad. A lot of them stated how the relationship was not normal and not an average father-daughter relationship. There's actually this one file on this one occasion that talks about how when we were in contact, we kissed each other on the lips 56 times during the space of an hour. And that's how our relationship was like. And again, I did think it was normal. So we would kiss each other frequently on the lips. Like, even once I got past a certain age, we would still do this. I would kiss his hands as well. I don't know where I learnt this from. Obviously, I was doing this for years, but I don't know if this was something that he had taught me to do, or if this was something where, because he was just the only person that I had, where I worshipped him that much that I kind of would kiss his hands. I don't know, but that was something that was brought up by social services, was the fact that, I would frequently kiss his hands. Yeah, I was in foster care for about a year, and while I was in foster care, the police would ask me, there's indications that, that encounters have happened between you and your dad. And I just denied it. For like 8-9 months, I just denied anything. I told them that, he would never do this. He's an amazing person, stuff like that. And then one day, a police officer came to the foster home. They just kind of told me that we know there's evidence, found, several pieces of evidence found that he has done things to you. That was the first time that I'd ever told anyone. And I told the police officer everything. Like, we must have been there for hours. I was just describing everything. And then after that point, I had to do several different video interviews. He was charged with sexual abuse of minors and making indecent images and having, child on his laptop and stuff. When that had happened, basically I was in what's called short-term foster care, which is where you can't stay there for longer than like a year or for longer than like 2 years. So obviously they had to find me somewhere else to live because I was in a short-term foster care arrangement. They were asking me, do you have anyone else? I was like, no, like, this is the only person that I have in my life. I don't know where my mom is. Like, I don't know how it happened, but following that and kind of like needing somewhere to live, that's when I tried to find my mom and my maternal side. And I actually found my sister, my older sister, on Facebook, and I messaged her and told her everything that had happened, and she told my mom, and then contact with my mom began, and we started talking over the phone and having video chat. I asked her, can I come and live with you? And she said yes. So, you know, the social worker had to fly out there and check if everything was okay, everything was fine, and then we made plans for me to go live over there. In 2010 or 11, I went to go live in Las Vegas, where my mom lives, and my stepsister at the time, and my younger sister, because she had more children after me, her husband at the time. When I arrived at the airport, she was there. Like, the whole family was there. And I just remember thinking, so I was really excited to like meet her, and, you know, like my dreams had all come true, because when I was a kid, I would always like write poems and stories, and it would always be about my mom. Like, it would always be how, you know, I want to meet her one day. It was like a fantasy that I had in my head that, you know, I would one day meet my mom and she was this amazing woman. I was expecting it to be really magical, and it just wasn't. I was 13 at this point. She didn't cry. There was not one single tear. And so from then on, you know, I lived with her and the family. I lived with her until I was 17. Our relationship was I think it was always a bit strange. I'd never had my mom in my life. I didn't even know how to behave with a mother. Like, I still was calling her by her name. I wasn't calling her by mom, because I'd gone so many years and I wasn't allowed to call her mom. So I was still calling, you know, for months, probably even over a year, I was still calling her by her name. And I think that made it very strange as well, because she wanted me to call her mom. And so we had a very rocky on and off relationship. Like, I loved her, obviously, but she just wasn't the woman that I thought she would be. I needed a lot of help and support, because all these things that had happened, I never received any counselling. After it had happened and I was placed in foster care and I went to school with my mom, I never received any counselling or any help in that sense at all. Like, nothing. Even any effort from her in the sense of trying to get me some counselling or therapy or anything. Our relationship was it struggled. And obviously I started school over there, I met friends. I became more interested in boys at that point, because obviously the only person that had ever been interested in me was my own dad. I feel as though I had I put myself out there a lot, because I wanted boys that were my own age to like me. You know, not my dad, not older men. Like, I just wanted boys that were my own age to like me. So I put myself out there. I do want to write a book in the future. So, I mean, I am working on a book. So until I do that, I don't think it probably is possible to talk about everything, is it? Or describe everything. I don't think it ever will be until that point. Even though I'm really bad with seeking help, like I am really bad with that, and I am working on that. But like I said before, there is numerous different avenues and help out there, and outlets to like share, you know, your story with people, you know, like becoming, you know, a speaker for colleges and stuff like that, and talk to children or young people about. There's a lot of help out there. Like, in the sense of me, hopefully this is just a big hurdle that I can now say, okay, I've done this now, so I am going to press and try different, you know, other outlets. I've only got a couple of pages on my book, and I've been working on it for like 2-3 years. But yeah, I will get it done eventually.